Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So here's a new deck profile for you guys today. This time it's on Madolche's. So I've been wanting to play this deck for a very long time. It was just so expensive back then, and now that the cards are, more obtainable now, more so than they used to be at least, I figured, you know what, I'll piece this deck together and yeah, finally present to you guys my own Madolche deck. And yeah, let's go and get started. So the main deck's 40 cards, and that's pretty much all there is to say. So starting off with 3 copies of Madolche Madolche. So this is one of your starters. In fact, you got like 3 different starters in this deck. But, oh, and just this, for those who are unfamiliar with Madolches, they all have the gimmick where if they're destroyed by an opponent's card and sent to the graveyard, they shuffle themselves back into the deck. But anyway, when this card is normal or flip summoned, you can add 1 Madolche monster from your deck to your hand. So this is basically your main searcher. Next, we got 3 copies of Madolche Angeli. So this card reads that if you contribute this card and special summon 1 Madolche monster directly from your deck, and if you do, it cannot be destroyed by battle, but you have to shuffle it into your deck during the end phase of your next turn. So Angeli gets you access to some of your other Madolche monsters, so like cards like Hoot Cake, which basically Hoot Cake will just banish this card and bring out Gelato, but we'll get to that momentarily, so moving on. 3 copies of Madolche Petting Cessor. So this card has 2 different effects, but the most important one is probably this one. If you have no monsters in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. So this card is basically a free extender as long as you have no monsters in your grave. And when this card is special summoned, another part that's super important is that you can special summon 1 other Madolche monster directly from your deck, but you have to reduce its level by 1, in which case you're going to summon out your Pudding Cessor a majority of the time. So yeah, Madolche Pudding Cessor, this is definitely one of the best cards for the deck. So definitely make full use of it. Moving on, 2 copies of Madolche Hoot Cake. So with this card, So what this card does is that you can banish a Madolche monster from your, or any monster, I'm sorry, not just Madolche monsters. You can target 1 monster in graveyard, banish it, and if you do, special summon a Madolche monster directly from your deck. So a lot of these basically just summon from deck. But you don't really want to see Hoot Cake in your opening hand unless it's the only card you can play. But if you have enough combo pieces where you can fully utilize Hoot Cake, then it's alright. But overall, like, yeah, if he's like the only Madolche monster in your hand, that's where things become a bit of a problem. So, yeah, Hoot Cake is somewhat of a brick. Next, 2 copies of Gelato. So this card for sure is a brick in your hand if you see it in your opening hand, but you still want to run it at least at 2. If this card is special summon, or I'm sorry, when this card is special summon, you can add 1 Madolche spell or trap from your deck to your hand, but you have to control a face-up Madolche beast-type monster to resolve the effect. So in which case, Hoot Cake is going to be your beast-type monster. So, and oh, one more thing I should mention. Some of these Madolche monsters have wind effects, so they can miss timing, so just bear that in mind. So make sure your last action is usually when they're summoned, so yeah. Or when they're shuffled back into your deck. That has to be the last action in order for you to be able to use the effects. Alright, so moving on. The last of the Madolche lineup is 1 copy of Pudding Sis. So it's a level 5 monster. It doesn't really do much other than just, it does have a pretty good disruption effect. So if this card is engages in battle with an opponent's monster, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy that target after damage calculation. So that's actually pretty good. But it is a level 5 monster, so that's the only thing. So definitely don't want to see this at all in your hand. You want to bring this out of the effect of Pudding Cessor. But overall, a great card, the fact that, it becomes a level 4 once it's summoned off of Pudding Cessor's effect. But overall, that's pretty much it. Alright, so now, as for the hand traps, that's the thing. A lot of people are running like Herald of Orange Light. I like the idea at first, but then I realized, the fact that you don't want monsters in your graveyard is where it becomes a bit of a problem. And that's not just for Herald of Orange Light. It also can be pretty situational with Ash Blossom. So I was trying to figure out, like, what cards do I want to play that don't really go to the graveyard that much. So, for sure for this format, because I think it's one of the best hand traps, especially against Dragon Link being one of the best decks, I am running Phantasme. Phantasme is really good because, if your opponent summons a Link monster, you can special summon this card for free, draw cards equal to the number of Link monsters they control plus 1, and essentially you get to fix your hand. So Phantasme is really good for going second, and again, Dragon Link, I kind of see it a lot around here, so yeah, I didn't really object to Phantasme. And of course, that's pretty much the only hand trap I'm running. So moving on, playing 2 copies of Gamma Seal, so I am running the Kaiju package. I think this is going to be the best way to go now, because I saw this just recently on another deck list, where they run like 2 Gamma Seal, 2 Godarla. Bird Up is still a deck, so that's why Godarla's is going to be like one of the better Kaijus right now. So yeah, you definitely want to try the Kaiju package, because Madolche's is more of a going second deck in my opinion, because the deck is really good at breaking boards and essentially really good at OTKing your opponent. So yeah, I felt like this was probably going to be the best way to go about it. And plus, kaijus in general out a lot of things. They out Dragoon, they just out anything that can't be destroyed by a card effect or anything like that. So yeah, just anything that's problematic, this is going to be one of the better ways to go about it. So yeah, I feel like this is going to be the way to go from now on. And that's pretty much it for the monsters. All right, so now we're moving on to spells. I'm running 3 copies of Madolche Salons. This card gives you an additional normal summon. I definitely think it's one of the best cards in the entire deck because, again, an additional normal summon is really good. So, and it does have a mandatory effect of where if one of your Madolche monsters is added back to your hand or shuffled back into the deck, you have to set one Madolche spell or trap directly from your deck to the field. So, again, this is a mandatory effect. So, but of course, it can't set itself, which would be great, but it can't. So, yeah. All right, 1 Madolche Sato. This basically gives your Madolches a power boost, but also the most important part is that it shuffles back all Madolche monsters in your grave back to your deck. So, yeah, pretty good. And also, what else? What was I going to say? Oh, so if a if monsters in your grave would be returned to the deck by the effect of a Madolche monster, you can add that card to your hand instead. So, that's actually not too bad. But again, you're mostly just going to use it for the recursion ability. And yeah, 1 Madolche ticket. Most people are running this only at 1 now because it's a hard once per turn. You know, like I didn't realize that myself too. Because the majority of the time, yeah, you would think like cards like these wouldn't be once per turn, especially the more old school cards. But nope, it is a hard once per turn. So when a Madolche card is returned from your side to the field or grave back to your hand and main deck, by a card effect, add 1 Madolche monster from your deck to your hand, and if you control a face-up fairy-type monster, you can special summon the monster from your deck in face-up attack mode. Again, this can miss timing because, again, it's a when effect, not an if effect. So just bear that in mind. The shuffling back has to be the last action in order to perform this effect. All right, so moving on to my other spells. 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. I was originally running Book of Moon, but before I realized, I was like, you know what? I think that works better if you're playing Extravagance, which you can, by the way. Extravagance is also a great option. Some people like to play the Extravagance card. Some people prefer Prosperity. It's all about personal preference, honestly. But instead of Book of Moon, I am running 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. Forbidden Droplet is an amazing card right now, especially like some people, you know, are playing Dark Ruler No More as a budget option. But the thing is, like, if you play Dark Ruler No More, your opponent takes no damage at all, whereas Forbidden Droplets, you know, you can still achieve some damage with Pot of Prosperity or this card for that matter. So, yeah, and plus, like, the fact that it negates and cuts monsters' attack points in half, that's really nice. So, yeah, that's the only reason why I decided to go Droplet instead. But anyway, moving on, 2 copies of Kaiju Slumber. Since you're running a Kaiju package, this is basically Dark Hole, so why not, right? For 1-ofs, 1 Called by the Grave, and a Harpy's Feather Duster. And for trap cards, I'm only running 4 of them. I'm running 2 copies of Gravedigger's Trap Hole. My deck hard loses to Nibiru, so yeah, I gotta watch out for that. So I am running Rafflesia as, you know, just as a precaution. Plus, Gravedigger's Trap Hole is really good that not only does it inflict 2,000 points of damage to your opponent, but the fact that it can negate hand and graveyard effects, yeah, why wouldn't you want to play this, right? So, well, there. And, of course, 2 copies of Promenade, another good form of disruption. It also has a pretty cool banishment effect where if you banish it, you can apply a Madolche monster to one of your Madolche Xyz monsters as material. So, kind of like recycle some of your resources and get some more advantage that way. So, yeah, Promenade is probably going to be the better trap. I'm not running Knights. Knights is just too situational considering that you have to have no monsters in your graveyard to resolve it. So, yeah, it just became a dead most of the time I tried it out. But anyway, moving on to the extra deck. 2 copies of Madolche Fresh Sistar. That's just got an ultra rare rarity bump. So, I'm pretty happy with that. 3 Madolche Glass Souffle. Some of those, for those who don't know, this card has a protection effect as long as you shuffle back one of your Madolche monsters, and also as long as it's pointing to a Madolche monster, your opponent can't target spells and traps. Glass Souffle applies protection from monster effects. So that's basically what it's there for, but he also wanted the fact that it's got a pretty good body on its defense stats, so yeah, it's pretty nice. And also if a Madolche card is sent to the grave while this card is on the field, you can shuffle up to 2 cards from the graveyard, so keep in mind this also applies to your opponent's graveyard, shuffle them back into the deck. So it's pretty nice just to, you know, get some resources back, but also if your opponent has graveyard resources too, it's good to just bounce it back to the deck. That way it'll make it harder for them to draw it back into it again. So, yeah. 3 copies of Tiramisu. So this is probably going to be one of the best Xyz monsters you're going to play, simply because you can detach 2 materials, shuffle up to 2 Madolche monsters from your deck back to your, or into your grave back into your deck, and you can bounce back up to that many number of monsters your opponent controls. Or I believe it's any cards, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, any, let's see, off the edge. Yeah, any shuffle, any 2 cards. So, yeah, that's pretty nice. And keep in mind, this does not target, so, yeah, that's pretty nuts. So this is a good way to out your goon also. So as long as you can bait out that negate, no worries. Or basically any negate, really. Borreload Savage Dragon, Scarlet Red Dragon, Archfiend Abyss. So, like, anything that can really pose a huge threat to you, it's just a great way to clear boards. I'm also running 3 copies of Chocolate a la Mode. So you can summon this off of any rank 4 or lower Madolche monster. So, and just transfer into materials. And this is actually pretty nuts whenever you're going into Zeus too, because like, as long as you engage in battle with either one of those 2 rank 4s, you can summon this out and then bring out Zeus. So that's, you're just basically like stacking more materials, which is pretty nuts. But anyway, once per turn, you can target 1 Madolche card in your grave, shuffle it into your deck. While this card has Madolche Pudding says as material, when a Madolche cards in your graveyard is shuffled back into the main deck, except during the damage step, you can detach 1 Xyz material, and of course you can special summon 1 Madolche monster from your deck in attack or face down defense, so not too bad. And of course for the other Xyz monsters, one of Felicia, as I mentioned, for the Gravediggers, and Zeus. Zeus is broken, and the fact that it clears boards, and it's not once per turn, so yeah, that's pretty nuts. And for the last 2 cards, these are actually mainly to deal with Dogmatica players, so 1 Entest, 1 Cypher Lord Omega. Again, just to deal with like that random Dogmatica player, but overall these are just mainly to they're just mainly Pot of Prosperity fodder, so you can just banish, you can just put in whatever you want. But again, I think Entest is for sure, you definitely want to run at least one of those, that way you can punish, you know, like Maximus whenever that goes into an effect. So yeah, that's pretty much the only reason why it's in there. Extra, or not extra deck, side deck, 3 copies of Lancia. This is primarily to deal with dinosaurs. I am still running Ash Blossom on the side, but again, I don't think main decking it right now is a good idea, because again, you don't want to conflict with your strategy, because you don't need monsters in your graveyard. You want them off the graveyard in order to get full value. 2 Nibiru, and of course 1 Pinkertops. So all great going second cards. To deal with any back row heavy strategy, you know, 2 Cosmic Cyclone. If I'm forced to go first, this is basically a card that helps me get around that. So 3 copies of Solemn Strike. I'm also running a Red Reboot just as another form of back row precaution. So yeah, Red Reboot does come in clutch every now and then. But overall, that's all I got for you guys. Well, hopefully you guys enjoy this, and I will catch you guys again next time.